We have some new information on a manhunt that is on in Indiana for whoever shot and killed a pastor's pregnant wife. Amanda Blackburn's death officially ruled a homicide, and her husband, Pastor Davy Blackburn, has been cleared as a suspect. Police now looking for potential connections, perhaps, to other crimes that happened that same day. And the shooting suspect, once found, may face a stricter sentence because Blackburn was pregnant. More on this with our legal panel. Fred T.C. is a former federal prosecutor, and Robert Bianchi is a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor as well. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Fred, I'm going to start with you. They're looking at this as a possible robbery gone bad, but the victim here was 12 weeks pregnant. So how will that change possibly the charges or the sentence?
Well, a couple of ways. First of all, under the circumstances here, there's not enough to enact the Indiana death sentence. But there is a statute on the book that was passed after a bank teller was shot when she was carrying twins that allows to enhance the sentence from anywhere from 6 to 20 years if the victim was pregnant. So in this instance, I mean, I think that this crime does call out for this. I mean, this young woman was shot in front of her toddler, who was then left alone at the house. I mean, this is a horrific, horrific crime.
Yeah, the case that you mentioned there, I think it was back in 2007. The victim survived, but the two unborn children, who were 5 months along at the time, died. They did not survive. So my question to you, Bob, would be, will the age of the pregnancy, how long it's been going on, will that be a factor in the case? This woman, Blackburn, she was just 12 weeks pregnant at the time.
Yeah, it's going to be a factor. Listen, I mean, the defense in this case, and I agree with what Fred was saying, but the defense in this case is going to try to argue that they did not know, the person who committed this crime, that she was pregnant. And there is a little bit of a glitch in this law, and this law has been very controversial in Indiana, and there's going to be a question as to whether or not the actor actually knew she was pregnant at the time. So the age of the fetus, if you will have a very significant impact factually from the defense point of view as to whether or not this evidence of the fetus should even be included or brought before the jury as being overly prejudicial unless the state has compelling evidence to show that the actor knew or should have known that she was pregnant. In my opinion, that's the defense argument in this case.
Fred, what do you think? I mean, should it not be brought before the jury as evidence?
Well, good job by Bob. He's raised the exact issues that you would have to raise as a defense lawyer, that this guy didn't know. But this is a sentence enhancement. In the case, and he's right, these laws in Indiana have been very, very controversial. But this is a sentence enhancement because the victim was pregnant. Interestingly, had this woman been sufficiently pregnant that this was a viable fetus, this defendant, when charged, would be eligible for the death penalty. In this instance, I think because she was pregnant, I'm not sure you have to show intent. At least as a prosecutor, I'd argue that you don't. It's a sentence enhancement. If I shoot somebody driving in a car and then they run into 5 other people and kill them, you don't have to show that I intended to kill them or that I knew that they were going to be killed. And those are the arguments you have to make as a prosecutor.
And Bob, you dealt with a case before that had a similar issue, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I prosecuted half of my career, and homicide was pretty much what I did. I had a case in which a woman was pregnant, and she was actually had gasoline poured on her, set on fire, and was killed in front of her 10-year-old daughter, but she was pregnant at the time. And we tried very hard to get that evidence of the pregnancy in. And I agree with everything Fred is saying, but you know what? Prosecutors, and I always say this when I train them, need to be careful that you don't admit such prejudicial information when you have a good case that could potentially lead it to an appeal and it gets reversed because you went into overreach. So the prosecutor's got to be tailored. It's got to really need this evidence. It's got to be very valuable, and it's got to withstand appellate scrutiny. But in the case that I had, the judge did not allow that evidence to come out before the jury.
And Bob, you're 100% right, but I think this is a sentencing enhancement. I would not, if I was a prosecutor, raise it at trial, as long as it was under the statutory minimum, which could be up to 65 years for the underlying murder charge. I think this is a sentencing thing. I'm with you. No, you know, I get it. No conviction, no appeal. But I think if you overplay your hand and you ultimately get the case overturned, you haven't done your job as a prosecutor.
I agree.
Fred T.C., Robert Bianchi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. On that agreement, we'll end this.
Thank you.